Now, welcome back to the channel, and in today's video I'm giving a realistic take on what you can expect if you want to work in fashion, you're looking to work in fashion. If you've worked in fashion, then you'll understand exactly what I'm saying. And the reason why I'm making this video is not to discourage people, but to give people a good sense of what to expect when they're going to work in fashion, because this is a lot of stuff I've gone through. And if someone had told me a lot of this stuff, I would have been able to navigate working in fashion a lot easier. Since I graduated from Central St. Martin's a few days ago, I just feel like it made me think to myself that, I could help people if I talk about the realities of working in fashion and how hard it actually can be at times. Now, to start with, talking about like money or whatever, I have actually not earned a livable wage from fashion until like last year. And I've been working in fashion since I was like 17, 18. And money-wise, it just did not work. And the reason why I even stayed in fashion for that long, for reference, I'm like 25 now, is because like I really love fashion. So it was just one of those things where, when you love something so much, you're just like, I'm just going to push through and, try to be successful in fashion, whatever it takes, because I just really loved it and I didn't really want to do anything else. But I can imagine like 7 years, 6, 7 years is a long time. A lot of people would quit, and rightfully so, because for the most part, it just seemed like it wasn't ever going to work. And that's something you have to contest with if you're going to work with fashion. And the reason why this is the case, and I'm going to get into it later, is due to how much nepotism there is in fashion. Because the messed up thing about fashion, and I think this is the issue that a lot of people have with Nepo kids, Nepo babies, because a lot of these people like to act like they didn't get the opportunities because of their parents or their family that are in fashion, or their dad that's an executive or editor-in-chief of this magazine. But the reality is, nepotism is everywhere. So I don't really fundamentally have an issue with nepotism in terms of if I had a child, and the child worked in like fashion, which is my field right now, I would find ways to help them. The issue is when these people then try to pretend like that's not a reason why they are successful. They try to act like they're self-made or everything was done by hard work, which is just not true. And the difference between fashion and other industries, like, let's say someone is a surgeon. Maybe they can help get their kids in certain schools because they went to the school and there's the legacy and all those things. But ultimately, especially in the UK, you're not going to perform a surgery unless you're like a completely fully qualified surgeon. Unless like you have all the qualifications, you went to medical school, you then went to specialize in whatever you specialize in, maybe brain surgery or leg surgery or whatever. You are not committing any sort of surgery unless you have those qualifications. And if you do, you're going to jail for life. That is very different to the creative field. The creative field, qualifications are it's more complicated, because how do you prove that you're a qualified photographer? Some people go to school for it, some people don't. I'm a journalist. Journalism is more of a traditional sort of thing. So there are more people that have journalism degrees that are journalists than not, versus like something like photography or styling. And so you have a lot, or like modeling, like how do you get qualified to be a model? So a lot of these like Nepo kids, they exist in a lot of the creative space, and it's very hard to be qualified to be an actor, or qualified to, be a photographer, or qualified to be these things. And that's why it's a bit ambiguous when you talk about it. It's very, very ambiguous, because a lot of people say, oh, nepotism is everywhere, which is true, but it's not the same. It's not the same as being a Nepo baby that's a lawyer, because you still had to go to law school. It's not the same as being a Nepo baby that is an engineer, because you still had to study engineering. You still had to be just as qualified as everyone else. It's just that you might progress faster. But somewhere like fashion, you don't need to be qualified at all. And I'll give you an example. So my first internship, I was making minimum wage, which is fine because I was learning. I feel like when you're an intern, most internships aren't even paid, so which is messed up, but I was just happy that I was being paid. I was learning a lot, and that was the whole point of doing an internship, to learn. But the second internship I did, which was still minimum wage paid, by then I had developed loads of skills from my first internship. So I could do things like I could make patterns to an okay level. I wouldn't say I was amazing, but to an okay level. I was a writer. I was developing my writing skills. By then, I had started my YouTube channel, so I was getting good at like filming things. I was also good at, taking pictures. I had been a photographer for like 5 years prior. I also used to design like little zines, like my friend's zines in InDesign. So I was really good with InDesign. I was good with Photoshop. I was good with Premiere Pro. All these like different things, all these different skills bundled into one. Now, the internship that I applied to was a videographer role. It was like I was supposed to be a videographer and I was supposed to be part of the marketing team. And I specifically wanted to do that because I just wanted to gain skills in that. My first internship was more like a bit of everything and I wanted to specialize. Now, the problem with when you work in fashion or you're in the workforce, and this goes back to the Nepo kids or people that know people, whatever, is you don't really get financially compensated properly, because I was in a videography role. So I was supposed to be filming videos, editing videos, and maybe helping with some marketing things, right? But because they read my CV, they found out what skills I'm good at, even though my role was a videographer, they will make sure they use all your skills. And I had like bosses who would make like £100,000 a year. Bear in mind, I was on minimum wage. And these guys were horrible at their jobs. My immediate boss, this guy was the head of marketing, he did nothing. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I say he did nothing. And for the longest time, I was thinking, how does this guy get away with, like, not doing any work? Like, he would just delegate all his work to me. And then one day I found out that he was, like, really good friends with the CEO. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. And, like, when I say this guy did no work, he was the head of marketing. So his job is really to direct what I'm doing. And remember, I'm an intern. I'm supposed to be learning. But he's always just like, I trust you to do what you're going to do. You do it. And at that point, because the whole reason why you have heads of whatever is they're supposed to take on the responsibility. They're supposed to be experienced people. So if things go wrong, it's supposed to fall on them. And in that job, I made a few mistakes. And then he would just like blame me. And then the CEO would like have an issue with me. And I'm thinking, he's supposed to be the head of marketing. If I'm going to do his job, I might as well make his money too. Because he would literally come into work and just like be on Facebook all day. I'm not exaggerating. And those are the kind of people you encounter in fashion. There was also another woman who was head of content. And I cannot fathom, it makes no sense to me how you can be a head of content at a big fashion company and you don't know how to use Photoshop. Baffles me. So she would come up to me for every minute thing about, how do you do this in Photoshop? How do you do that? And in my head, I'm just thinking, why am I here? I'm an intern. I'm making minimum wage. I'm supposed to be, learning. And I'm helping out these people that make 10, 20 times what I earn to do every tiny thing. And what happened after that, it was COVID, and then I went on furlough, and then I just like didn't go back to the job. But that job made me realize that I personally cannot work for a company in fashion unless like I'm going in at the top, meaning I'm in a mid-level or senior role. I have no interest in working in fashion for a company in a company setting like an employee, because they will just use you and use all your skills and not compensate you properly. And your bosses will be people who are friends with the CEOs and they have no skills and they're not talented at all. And they're horrible at their jobs. Like, it's funny because I had this like weird sense of what fashion was like because I got into fashion reading about books, making a YouTube channel. And the good thing about this YouTube channel is I learned so quickly because of this interaction between me and my audience. So for example, I might make a video about a fashion brand, and let's say I do get something wrong, because no one is perfect. Because of the audience that I have and the type of people that watch my channel, one of them, if not loads, are going to point out, oh, Io, in this part of the video, you said this was this, actually this was this. And then I'll read the comment, look at it. If it's wrong, I'll like put a pinned comment, or, because now on YouTube you can like cut parts out, so I'll just cut that part of the video out. So I'm not like sharing misinformation or whatever. That doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. We're all human. Humans make mistakes, whatever. But I learn so quickly because of things like that. And then also, I'm under the microscope of my audience, meaning that I can't just like talk rubbish because my audience will let me know that I'm talking rubbish. And that kind of, I thought that's how the fashion industry was. I thought that people in the fashion industry were like really smart and really knowledgeable. But I kid you not, like most journalists in fashion don't even know like basic ass fashion history, that like people like you, my audience, would be like, how can that be your job and you don't know that? Like there are journalists who are editors-in-chief of massive magazines and they don't have a clue about fashion. And why you have to learn to navigate this is, if you work in fashion, a lot of your time until you get to like senior roles, which I'm not at that level yet, is going to be spent answering to people that don't know anything about what they're talking about, and they're not good at their jobs, and they mainly got it because they know this person that knows this person, or their dad is like owns the company and that sort of stuff. And really why I'm making this video is just to get you prepared for that and understand that. Because I feel like if you understand this reality, you're going to mainly try to get into jobs that serve you as a person, rather than just get a job just because it's a job, because otherwise you'll fall into like the situation I fell into. And it's crazy, like, okay, let's say someone writes an article for Vogue. There's nowhere where you can like type feedback on something that's wrong. So a lot of journalists that write articles, they literally have no feedback on anyone telling them about something, that a mistake they made or something that they wrote that was wrong or that sort of stuff. Whereas when I write an article, I normally post it on my platforms, and people will like, I'll literally go back and forth with like people who have read the article and like have stuff to say about maybe what I was writing about or different writing styles or whatever. That always happens when I write an article. And most journalists just don't have that, which is why they don't even learn. They don't even know they're making mistakes. They don't even know that something that they've written is historically wrong, because no one even questions it. It's also the case that, you know, kids that are Nepo babies or whatever, they have a head start, as everyone knows, but it's really hard to like, when I started in fashion, I had no family member that had ever worked in fashion, like plus my extended family. And so I was coming in completely blind. I had no connections, I had no contacts, I had no friends in the industry, and I had to literally build that from complete scratch. And it's very, very hard to do that. Like, I feel like I wouldn't be in the position I'm in now if I didn't have an audience, which is so sad. Because in fashion, there are people that I know that are so talented, whether they're designers or stylists. They're way more talented than some people I see that get big opportunities, but they just don't know people, or their mum isn't the head of this person that can introduce them to this celebrity, to style that celebrity. And unfortunately, that's just how the creative scene is. I know it's kind of messed up for me to say that's just how it is, but genuinely, I don't see it changing anytime soon. I remember when COVID happened and all the designers were like, yeah, we've realized fashion is too fast and we're going to slow down the pace of fashion. And now look at it. We've gone back to resort collection. So the fashion industry just is not open to change. A lot of fashion is also about ego, because I've been in jobs where I've had a superior say something about fashion history that's completely wrong. Why they would talk about fashion history in like a work setting is maybe like we're on a shoot and let's say the stylist has, you know, pulled a reference from a certain time period or a certain designer's collection from so-and-so time, and they're talking about it or stuff like that. And they'll just be saying things that are categorically wrong. And I can't even correct them because a lot of people in fashion, their egos are so big that they're just not open to any sort of criticism or anyone telling them that they're wrong. Like the way that if I make a YouTube video and I say some wrong information, everyone will let me know and it's like completely fine. That's what you should do. But in the real world, in fashion, a lot of people just are not open to that. So I'm literally just sat there looking at this person just saying something that is just completely wrong. And I just have to just sit there and just listen to like garbage being spoken. Like quite literally, I've had so many jobs in fashion at this point, and the only place I felt valued, apart from like recent roles, like I lectured at Central St. Martin's for a while, that was really nice. But apart from my first internship, the only place where I felt like my ideas were valued, they didn't try to like extract my skills, like if they hire me as a writer and then try to get me to like edit videos. The only place that didn't do that outside of like my first internship and recent roles is when I worked at the Business of Fashion. That is one of the best places if you're a journalist to work. Imran Ahmed is one of the most down-to-earth fashion executives I've ever met in my entire life, and I've met loads. They always have some sort of ego. They always feel like they're better than everyone else, maybe because they make more money or whatever, or what they've achieved. They feel like they know everything. Imran is like one of the few who actually values all his employees. Like if you work for the Business of Fashion, there's like a way you can get in touch with him. There isn't like this like stark like, I know so many brands, I'm not going to mention names, but there's so many fashion brands that are big where it's like impossible to talk to the creative director. They like have that barrier. You're not even allowed on their staircase type thing. And at the Business of Fashion, I felt like I could pitch any idea, and if it was a good idea, they would go with it. Of course, it was very strict in terms of like writing and the edit, which is how it should be if you're at a good magazine or publication. But it was amazing because BOF will challenge you. You're also not like used and abused, by people trying to use your skills that you didn't sign up for, or trying to use all your skills but still pay you tiny money. BOF doesn't do that. One of the few places that I've personally worked at that doesn't do that. So I can definitely vouch for BOF, and I always have good things to say about BOF. And of course, I've worked with so many companies since then, like Mr. Porter and like Sister Magazine and Vogue and so many other companies. And my experience with all those companies has been absolutely amazing. But the difference is I've worked with those companies as a freelancer. So I don't know what it's like to be an employee of these companies and how people are treated and what the hierarchy is. I have no idea. But with BOF, I have good things to say. And I think why I thought I'll mention all of this, because when it comes to this like Nepo baby conversation, the conversation always goes one way, and it's always like, why are people complaining about Nepo babies? Like, if you were rich and you had kids, you would help your kids too. And the bigger issue is just that a lot of these Nepo kids or kids that have parents in the industry and stuff like that, they love to pretend or convince themselves or deceive themselves maybe even that they got to where they got to because of, their hard work, and they work so hard and all this sort of stuff, when there are someone like me, there are so many hoops I had to jump through, like so many hoops. It's absolutely insane. Like it's so insane. I could not even start to tell you the type of things I had to do to be successful in the industry. Like times that I had absolutely no money, and there was a time when I had no money, so I couldn't take the train in London, and I had to ride a bicycle for like 2.5 hours to get to like a shoot that I was working at. There are kids who, their parents, not apart from being in the industry, they have a lot of money, so they can afford to do like unpaid internships and whatever, and get like experience at like big companies, and then use that experience and like leverage it to like progress further into the industry. Not everyone has that, at their disposal. And so to end the video, really, it's really just a reflection of like what it is like working in the industry, and why like I don't really want to work in the industry unless I'm entering at a certain level. Because if I was like a senior executive or whatever, I would be like Imran Ahmed and like value everyone that's part of the team and listen to everyone's ideas, because like not everyone knows everything. There's probably something that 16-year-olds are into right now that I've never even heard of. But it's because I'm aware enough to understand that I don't know everything, whereas like a lot of people in fashion, they think that they literally know everything on the planet. And that's how they behave too. And so to end the video, I think My biggest advice to anyone that wants to work in the fashion industry is really to try and build your own audience. That way you don't have to jump all these hoops and, try to be abused and, used terribly by all these companies. And how you can do that is not everyone has to start a YouTube channel. I know not everyone wants their face to be in front of the camera, or they don't want to be like their face to be known. You can do what Peter Doe did. Peter Doe just built a big audience on Instagram. There are people that, post on Twitter. There are journalists now that have like Substacks. There's one way or another it just depends on like your industry or what you do. But personally, I would say build your own audience, build your own community, and then serve that community rather than work with a lot of these companies. Because a lot of companies now don't actually value the input of young people and value where young people are coming from. Because you need to remember, like, social media only came out when I was like, I remember Facebook came out when I was just about going into secondary school. So I've grown up with Facebook, but not really, even just from like the age of 10. So I understand it way more than someone who's like way older who didn't grow up with it could understand it. But I feel like kids that are younger than me understand it even more. Like, I see people that are younger than me that do stuff on social media. I'm like, oh my God, that's such a good idea. How'd you come up with that? But that's just like, they were like born into it. Like, that's just what they know. And it's so weird that you have a head of like TikTok content that's like 70 years old. It's like, doesn't make any sense. The audience on TikTok, the people that you're trying to reach, none of them are your age. They don't think like you. You need to hire someone who's younger. But yeah, you can see that my frustrations are coming out. But let me know what you think about like this topic. Like, share any of your stories that you have, good or bad, of working in the fashion industry. I really wanted to make this video just to get this conversation going and for people that are getting in the industry to know what to expect that they're going into. It's not easy. It's very difficult. It's very glamorized. Working in fashion is not glamorous at all. And stay tuned for more videos. I have a new video coming out on Patreon really soon about Harper's Bazaar and like the history of it. So that'll be really cool. And tomorrow I'm also releasing a Paris Fashion Week vlog, which will be really interesting because I talk about my experience writing for Vogue Runway and like interviewing Yohji Yamamoto and like loads of other stuff anyway. But thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back really soon. Especially now that I've graduated from school, so I actually have time to make videos for once. So yeah.